Well, hi again, everybody. This is BBC at the Abbey. And the community has been sharing some of its thoughts, its practices, and experiences on dealing with anger in our minds. And what works for some of us, some of the antidotes, the definition of anger, what the disadvantages are in the past few days. So today, I'm going to share some of my experiences with anger. And one of the things that I had to come sort of to realize about myself after I lived here at the Abbey for a while is that I had this lifelong misconception that I wasn't an angry person. I mean, after all, angry people are nasty people. They throw things, they shoot people, they break things, they yell, they scream, they have fire coming out of their ears. And I have none of those things, so I'm not an angry person. And I've sat with that misunderstanding all of my life. And when I got here, I found out that that was not true. And part of it is that according to the Buddha, anger manifests in a lot of different ways, from the most subtle to the most obvious, and which means that I am angry almost every day. For the most of the time in my life, it arises as kind of irritation, frustration, impatience, restlessness, being pissed, being peeved, being annoyed, kind of those little subterfuge little feelings that, but it's not, the steam coming out of my ears. And that the other thing, and so I have come to terms with the way it manifests for me is this nagging, ongoing mind that just basically is not happy that things are not going the way that I wanted to. And then the Buddha also said that there are different objects in which we focus this irritation, this anger, this annoyance, this rage at. And it can either be a person, and that could include ourselves, being really pissed, frustrated, angry, hateful of ourselves. It can be or some that we perceive as harming us, the suffering that we receive or the suffering that we experience, or the reasons why we are harmed. So getting really, really angry at other people's motivations or what we perceive as harmful motivations. My personal experience of the second one, the suffering we receive, has probably been the one that I have had to deal with most directly recently in the past few years. Whenever I am sick physically or tired mentally and physically, I have this habit of getting really pissed off at my state, my mental unhappiness, my physical unhappiness, whether it be exhaustion or injury or disease or aging, sickness. I just get really, really pissed off. I mean, it's keeping me from doing what I want to do. At first, I try to ignore it. And then if I don't ignore it, then I try to just will and force myself to push through these kind of experiences. And it doesn't work. In fact, it makes me even more miserable, makes me feel sicker, makes me feel worse, makes me feel unhappier by just trying to move the ocean when in fact this experience is happening and I don't have a lot of control over it. So then when I give in and go to bed, or a few years ago I go to the hospital, I just watch my mind get restless, get agitated, start to blame everybody and everything. And what happens is that there's a lot of this harsh language going on the inside, wishing that things were different, and finding all the things that I would rather be doing, feeling sorry for myself, and pretty much wishing and being determined that I'm going to just put up with it as best as I can, but it really colors the way in which I experience the suffering. So now after 4 years of experiencing some longer term sickness, I've got to look at this mind over fairly long periods of time, which 2, 3, 4 months, to watch this mind and to see how frustrated and irritated I get, and have had to work on the antidotes so that I could have some peace around these experiences that I don't have any control over. And so there are some wonderful antidotes around this kind of angry, frustrated, pissed off, impatient mind that comes when we're experiencing both physical and mental suffering that we don't have a lot of control over. First, and some of these work very, very well for me, and some of them I still have to, there's a familiarity with antidotes. At first, they don't seem to have much power because we're not familiar with using them. We're normally used to just letting the afflictive state of mind just take us for a ride. And when we try to use the afflictions, we're so way past the point of no return that we just have to sort of wait until things chill out. So the first antidote, when you really find yourself really feeling, yucky in your head and in your body, is to get real about the nature of samsara. I mean, we've been talking a lot about this down in the Spokane meditation class, that the nature is to have problems, pain, and suffering. Samsara is about having a body and mind under the control of afflictions and karma. And until we realize emptiness directly, we're pretty much caught in this cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and all of the suffering and pain and mental anguish that comes with it. So it's kind of like giving myself a reality check rather than thinking that when these things happen to me that it's out of context, it doesn't have any reference to what this whole world is like anyway, So I've got to give myself a little bit of a reality check. This is samsara samkhya. This is the way it works. So that's the first one. And what happens, and I had this maybe a few times this winter, is that I actually try to use the nature of samsara, and this is the way it is, to try to find a way to fuel my determination to be free. If I could get so fed up with this cycle, to get so fed up with the dissatisfaction of samsara, I've had one or two of these little eclipsed moments where I could actually see my wish to be free of it come into my mind as an awareness, not even an understanding, but as an awareness. And what would it be like to have unceasingly, day and night, the wish, the determination to be free from this cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death under the control of afflictions and karma? What would that be like? And to kind of have this little bit of a, gosh, just to say, that would be really amazing. That would be very different than what I'm experiencing right now. The other one is that I have found useful is looking at the advantages of getting sick. First of all, it works on my pride, on how healthy and strong and resilient and tenacious I am, and how my mind can basically work over and move through any type of obstacle. There are certain ones that I really have to lower my expectations, and I also get this sort of humbling, what's it called, eating crow, whatever it is, this kind of humility that says, you're not strong, you're not tenacious, you're not well, so get over the identification with that because it's not happening right now. I had a huge amount of pride to my physical energy this life and have used the sickness to be an antidote to that type of arrogance that comes with having that some of us, or I have, having a very, very physical, strong constitution. The other one that has worked for me is it increases my compassion, first of all, towards myself, which is a very, very difficult place for me to go. I don't have compassion for myself very easily. I tend to dismiss it. I tend to underestimate the need for it. And then it gets too, for me sometimes compassion for myself gets too vulnerable, it gets too soft, it gets too open, and I get a little scared when I really bring compassion truly into my own experience. I'm getting a little better at it, but it's still something that I want to foster more willingly and more joyfully, is to turn towards having compassion for myself when I'm feeling really crappy. Then I can turn it towards others. And the taking and giving meditation has probably been, of all the antidotes to physical suffering that I've had, taking and giving has been the most profound. Because if I think I'm suffering with whatever, asthma, bronchitis, bowel obstruction, swollen joints or whatever, I think about all the people in the world that have it 10 times worse than me, that have it as a chronic, acute condition, that have died from it, that have no health care to respond to it. And I take their suffering into my own mind and I use it. I love the whole thunderbolt idea. It just cracks and totally destroys that sense of poor me, isn't it terrible? I'm really struggling. The whole world should just stop and like give me some empathy here. You know, to see that, putting it into a larger perspective of the level of suffering that there is in the world, my suffering is very, very small in comparison to it. And so I take that on. And what it does is, after it kind of blows that black, self-centered, you know, I'm the center of the universe, pay attention to me because I'm sick sort of thing, it opens up this incredible space that gets me not only to feel thankful that it's only manifesting in the way that it is that it really opens up my wish that all beings who are suffering a lot more than I am, may they have the same causes and conditions I have. I have an incredible community who supports me. I have the best medical care and attention probably in America, that's just down the road. I have a beautiful home to live in. I have medicines, I have food, I have love, I have compassion. May all of these beings who don't have what I have, suffering beyond what I'm suffering, may they create the causes and conditions to have the fortune that I have when they get sick. And then lastly is the one about taking these small sufferings as a way for me to build my capacity. So when the crisis of, you know, the difficulties of long-term old aging, chronic health crises, and my actual time of my life when I'm going to be actively dying, may these little sufferings build my capacity more and more, so that as the small sufferings come, may I grow my capacity to really be able to meet the difficulties, the great sufferings and the great hardships with a kind of compassion and fortitude and resiliency, so that I won't freak out at that time. And so I see as that's, when I have these little aches and pains, I see them as my ability to grow my capacity, if I treat them as what they are. Nature of samsara, the ability to counteract my pride at my, you know, longevity and my strong constitution, my ability to take on the suffering of others. And it really builds capacity. And so I have seen these antidotes work in regards to the anger and the frustration and the pissed offness that I get when I get sick. And so if you are, there's nothing to lose by thinking about this. We're all going to experience it. Nobody is excluded from the pain of physical and mental suffering. So maybe, you know, give it a try next time you end up spending the day or a few days in bed, or you just feel like you want to put your head under the covers. Think about the different types of antidotes to deal with the suffering of samsara, and build your own capacity for compassion, for the determination to be free, and also for seeing who it is that's actually suffering, to try to build on the understanding of emptiness, of any inherent existence of whoever's sick and having a hard time. So hopefully that's helpful to you.